Welcome to section 3 of this course. In the previous section, we introduced new and important features of Svelte. This section is deeply related to that. We will expand some of the functions we saw in the previous section and also talk about some new concepts. We will start this section by learning how to dispatch events. We will continue with two-way binding between components and then with slots, a new concept for us. Another new and important concept are conditional rendering. The final video will see us finish our project while learning about reactive statements. Let's start this section with the first topic at hand, dispatching events. As we usually do, we will start by defining this concept and continue by explaining how to use it. The last part of the video will be adding this feature to our working project. All set? Let's start section 3. First of all, let's see what dispatching event really means. We already know about DOM events from the previous section, which is an advantage because this concept is related. We're also talking about events here. The idea behind event dispatching is to dispatch or send events from a child component to its parent. In previous videos, we already saw that it is possible to share data between parent and child using props. But with props, data flows in only one direction, from parent to child. Dispatch events are a way of solving that limitation. Dispatch events flow from child to parent, letting us send data upwards. This had not been possible thus far, and it allows for many implementations to be easier, especially thinking about the modularity and reusability of our Svelte components. Fortunately, we're also not limited in the amount of dispatch events, so we can dispatch as many events as we want to. Now that we know what dispatch events are about, let's see how to use them. Since dispatching events involves two Svelte components, let's start first with the side of the child component. This component will be the one dispatching the event to its parent. To dispatch an event, all we had to do is import the createEventDispatcher function and use it to dispatch our event. This function takes two arguments, name and details. The name will of course be the name we will have to reference to when we react to this event in the parent component. The detail can be anything that we want to forward, a string, an array, an object, even the whole event information if we want to. It is also important to know that dispatch events are of the type custom event, that they are not cancelable, and that they do not bubble. If we take the example of a child component in this slide, we import the function createEventDispatcher, we assign it to the constant dispatch, and when a keydown event takes place on an input, we dispatch the event keyPress with the details of the event.key property. On the parent side, we only have to react to the event using its name and executing a callback function when this happens. Following the example of the previous slide, we react to the keyPress event of our child component with a callback inline arrow function. As you can see, it is simple to react to events of children components. Event forwarding refers to the fact of receiving an event from a child component and then forwarding it to one's own parent component. If we continue with the previous example, suppose that now the parent component will not consume the event, but only forward it to its parent, the grandparent component. Well, in this case, the parent component only wants to forward the event. All it has to do to forward it is to use the on: directive followed by the name of the event. Very easy, right? The grandparent component can then consume the event like we saw before. Before we switch to coding, let's see which changes were made to the code since our last video. I changed and added some styles to the app.svelte and the form.svelte components. I also created the vcard component and nested it as a child of the app.svelte. The styling of this component was also adapted to look more similar to the style of our final vcard. Okay, it is now time to switch to VS Code and add some event dispatching to our project. Okay, so now we are in VS Code and we are in form.svelte, and as I mentioned before, we want to dispatch the click event to the parent component. So for that, first we need to import the createEventDispatcher function. So let's do that here in the script building block of our component. and I'll just paste it so it's a little quicker. And you can see we're doing, as I mentioned before, we import the function and we assign it to this constant called dispatch. Okay, so now we will use it, and for that we can go down here and create, for example, a new button. So let's do that. Let's create a new button, and let's give it the text create QR code. And inside this button, we want to react to the click event, right? And we will prevent the default behavior. And the callback function of this click event will be the dispatching of the event, as we mentioned before. So first we need to give it a name, which will name it create QR code. And the detail of the event will, for example, be the name, which is an information that we have available. Here we need this, and let's save it, and there we go. So now let's switch back to the parent app.svelte. So in app.svelte, first of all, let's define the new variable and call it QR code. Down here, QR code equals, and let's give it an empty string as a default value. And what we want to do is react to the dispatching of the create QR code event that we are dispatching here from form, assign it to this variable called QR code, and then pass it to the vcard, to the other child component called vcard, inside a prop that we will create later. So for that, first of all, we need to react to this dispatch event, and we will do it as we learned with the directive on : and the name of the dispatch event. In our case, it was create QR code. And here we are receiving a parameter of the function, and we will say QR code equals e.detail, which, as you remember, was the name that we had defined in the input. So now that QR code, the variable, has value, let's go to and pass it to the vcard component inside the prop, which we will also name QR code to make it a little simpler, right? So let's save this. That should be good. And now let's switch to vcard component and do the final step. So here we are in vcard, and first of all, we need to define the prop because it doesn't exist yet. We need a script building block in our component. And let's export the prop, which was called QR code, right? And let's give it the default value of false. And we could, for example, show it displayed here inside this section. Yeah, let's just display it here. And that should be good. Okay, let's save it and let's check out the changes we have made in the browser. So now we're in the browser with our development server running, and let's see, for example, if we give here a name, let's say, for example, ABC. If we create this button that we just created, we should dispatch the event with this detail to the parent, and then from the parent to the other child, and then play it here in the vcard. So let's give it a try, and you see that is working. I can do this many times, and if I write something else, it should be working as well. So we have successfully dispatched the event with the details and then passed it to the other child as a prop. Alright, that was all about event dispatching. As you have seen, this opens a new realm of possibilities for component communication.